Assalamu alaikum, my student. Good evening. Today we have to continue another theory after we discussed the other theories. So if you still remember, we discussed the theory of new criticism and formalism. We discussed also the feminism, and then now we are trying to talk about we discussed before also Marxism, and at this stage we have to discuss reader response theory, criticism, and after this we have to talk about colonialism. So in case of colonialism and modernism, postmodernism, we will discuss all these topics together. It means we only have a few days to finish this course. I have to remind you that by 25th of April it will be the last of our lessons, and that's why we have to finish as much as we can from the theories. So this week we will talk about reader response theory. Next week we will discuss the colonialism and post-colonialism theories together. And the last week we will try to talk about structuralism and deconstructivism together. It means you have to realize that we finish a lot of work. And reader response theory, why we have to talk about it? Because it's written by Louise Rosenblatt. That's like the 20th century, and she has the way of discussing the topics by involving the reader, him or herself. So you as a reader, you have to show your own opinion, and you have to be careful, however, about your way of describing. Not all of your opinions are accepted. It means you will show your opinion and your way of criticism, but not all are accepted here in reader response. It should be also follow some rules. And here what we have to understand, that we have some factors. The first factor here we discuss it's reader. So reader is one factor. Your response will be another factor. We have also text. So reader response is one factor. It means we have the text, like let's say today we will discuss the text of Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad, and this is the text. We have to discuss also the context. What do you mean by context? It means all the context that has the structure, the symbolism, the settings, themes. This is the context. So what we need to understand, that we have four elements: reader, response, we have the context, we have the text. And what we need, or what's behind all these elements, it's the final meaning that the reader grasp from the text when he or she read it for like 2 times, 3 times, as much or as many as you can. That's based on the way of your understanding and the experience that you need to link it. So in your book here you can see chapter number 6. It talks like page number 169. It shows you like an introduction, but we don't need to focus on it a lot. We have to move on and find out the information that we are looking for. So here, reader response theory, which didn't receive much attention until the 1970s. So no one think about it, because before it they think about new criticism, they think about Marxism, and here after 1970s they start using it. And you can see here we have two beliefs: that the role of the reader cannot be omitted from our understanding of literature. The reader do not passively consume the meaning presented to them. So we need the reader. We have to understand that the role of the reader is very important for any writer. That's the point of reader response. So the second belief here, they show that the second belief, it's about how different readers can discuss it differently. So no one has the same function or the same point of view. Each one has his own way of thinking about the literary work, and therefore we have to understand that point. We have here house passage, like the two boys ran until they came to the driveway, and you can read this work, but each one will consider it from the first impression or second reading, third reading time, a lot of issues. So that's what we need to think. And later on we have positive qualities, negative qualities. You discuss it by your own. Let's move to the good part that we are looking for. Here, the part that we need to understand, that we have 5 headings. So when we look at the reader response, it's not only one idea. You have to understand the reader response is an umbrella for some subheadings or subtitles, like transactional reader response, and this is the first theory. We have affective stylistics, we can talk about it, subjective reader response theory, and psychological reader response, and we have social reader response. So we have social, psychological, subjective reader response, and we have affective, this is related to emotional way, and transactional. That's the 5 elements that usually will be used inside the reader response. So sometimes you can find reader response maybe analysis based on one part of headings, like only transactional reader response, or you can find it subjective reader response, or you can read it social reader response. So they will minimize it in one point. No need to be quite wide. You have to narrow your work as much as you can. So that's the point that we are looking for. So you can read here a lot of things about transactional reader response. It's about what? It's about how does the transactional, or I will show you from the beginning. It's about, we can see here, Rosenblatt formulated many of its premises. Transactional analyzes transaction between the text and reader, how the text is already gained by the reader. Is it okay, easy, difficult, the sentences, the way of writing, the structure, how it looks like. So she differentiates among the term text, which refers he or the printed words of the page, reader or poem or whatever. That's the point of it. And we have a stimulus, I forget to mention it, stimulus, whether to continue reading of the text or stop, maybe you didn't like it. That's the first point. We have affective stylistics. It talks about little bit related to emotions, like here the text examined closely, often line by line, even word by word, in order to understand how stylistics affect the reader process of reading. So that's another point of justification and writing about the reader response theory. You can also check out some examples here. We have here subjective reader response. It talks about what? It talks about your own opinion, just your own experience, from your own experience, your own way of dealing with the situation, how it looks like to you. So this one led by David Pleach, reader response. So David Pleach wrote a lot of things about subjectivity when he reflected any work. So to understand how there is no literary text beyond the meaning created by reader's interpretation. So Pleach defined the literary text like what? Like many other reader response, differentiate between what he calls objects and symbolic objects. So this is the point about objects and symbolization. We can discuss the point of symbolization somehow in the text. Later, let's move to another part. Down we have psychological reader response theory. This is like psychoanalytic critic Norman Holland. he believes that readers' motives strongly influence how they read. So the psychological issues, it also infected or affect the reader whether to read normally or not, despite his claim, at least his early work, that objective text exists. Indeed, he calls method transactive analysis. So for psychological issue, Norman Holland, he believes that something motive or supported the reader to be or influenced by the text itself. So maybe the text will affect you for all of your life. That's the powerful writing, that maybe you read novel, and later on you will be memorizing the words in quotations for all over the years until you die. So social reader response here theory, under the reader response theory, you can look at the way how the text plays the crucial role in subjective reader response theory for social classes, maybe social way of thinking, the way of your dealing with people. This has affected you in your social life. So interpretive community, which we belong, so it belongs to my community. When I talk about the novels, sometimes my community is from Eastern community, and the Western culture is totally encountered, and it's against my culture. So I have to show something from my social reader response, whether we accept it in our community or not. That's about the interpretive of social reader response. So this is the point about the 5 elements, and I think you can read a lot of things. Here we have something from Great Gatsby. We have to read one at least, just to show you view of the Great Gatsby. Page number 190 in your own book, you can find how the way of discussing the points. So the first here element, they show us one quotation, and in the quotation here we can realize, like, oh no, save the first girl, it couldn't be that, because he was in the American army during the war. So they are talking about the Great Gatsby, and here speculation, Jay Gatsby inspires in his gossip-hungry party guests who have an obvious desire to be shocked in 2 important ways. So this is the gossip playing also a very vital role in Great Gatsby parties every Saturday night. You can read a lot about it here from the discussion to understand how we can enlist our sentences and lines into the discussion. So I don't want to focus on Great Gatsby in reader response. You can go and read a lot. Here we need to discuss like one element, like here 13 Nick meet Gatsby outside the Buchanan's house after Myrtle's death. Our response to Gatsby is moved from the negative to the positive. So before Myrtle's death, maybe all of us against Gatsby, we didn't recognize whether he has emotion or not. But here the change happened in the behavior of Gatsby after he learned that Daisy already drove his car. So he's taking the blame for her, but at the same time he taking the responsibility and become responsible of the situation. That's one part. You can have a look, and you can also read as much as you can, and later we can show you the discussion here. Some question we will raise to you later by a question to think more and more. Now let's move to another part that we are looking for, which is the part of what we call let's move. We need to think about that part, heart of darkness. So we have here heart of darkness. I wish that heart of darkness already something you can read. I also understand that heart of darkness is something new to you. Let me think about the part of heart of darkness. Here I can see from the situation the title. So we have here novella was written by Joseph Conrad. Joseph Conrad was very popular in the 20th century, and he wrote some work, a literary work that affected a lot of people all around the world. And one of his best work, or the best work that he has done, Heart of Darkness. So this novella we show you from imperialist point of view, reader response also, the reader response way. Here by the end of 19th century, let's read something about it. Before we think about it, we will talk about the main character here. One person or one guy, his name Marlowe, and he was in England. Marlowe left England to move to Congo, and it talks about the colonialism time, how the British Army or the British Empire occupied most of the countries around the world, especially in Africa. They controlled Africa, and what happened to them in Africa? They have a company, and Marlowe went there to work to find some profits like ivory. They search for ivory, they search for their own business to become rich, so or to get as much as they can from the resources in these countries. So here the end of 19th, European expeditions were sent to Africa for the sake of getting profit from ivory and other rich resources. Many expeditioners went to the Belgium, Congo, either enrich themselves or to civilize the natives there. Joseph Conrad wrote novella Heart of Darkness in 1902. This meaning of this title is worth analyzing. The words chosen of this title can be analyzed from literal and metaphorical point of view. Similarly, the use of symbols in the novella contributes to this literal and metaphorical analysis. So this is the first paragraph. Included also another verse. It's also written by Joseph Conrad, who is a Polish mariner. His novel is published in 1899. Heart of Darkness is based on Conrad's own journey to Belgian Congo. So the point here is mentioned again. Conrad wrote stories and novels, many with a nautical setting that depicts trials of the human spirit in the midst of what he saw as invasive. And also Conrad is considered early modernist, though his works contain elements of 19th century realism. So he's still in modernist time. We can, if we have time, we can talk about modernism, postmodernism, but I think we don't have much time to talk about this theory. But within that novel, we will understand that elements and the imperialism elements, the way of colonialism, and all of them can be linked somehow to modernism. So let's move on to discuss the way here of the story. The story mentioned like the novella happened in a jungle in Africa and Congo River, the traveling of Marlowe. So Marlowe, the main character, he is the main character in the whole novella. So what happened to Marlowe? Marlowe went to Congo River in a journey, and this journey he needs to reach a station, and this station, it belongs to a company, Belgian company. But let's move on. According to the Encyclopedia Britannica, the Congo is outside all nation regime. State needs to be defined, and thus its natives need to be civilized. So that's one target of writing about this story or this novella, is how to civilize people who are uncivilized or savage people. So in Congo, Marlowe thought that those people need to be civilized, and that's why he has to be there somehow. So that's already mentioned by Hendon. European comes to Africa to build civilized society, in their opinion, in the primitive Africa. So Europeans always think about the native of Congo are so primitive that they can easily be shaped by them according to GP, and that's what we mean by imperialism. So the subject matter here of civilization for primitive has discussed by Conrad. It's important to comprehend what white men can do in Heart of Darkness. So let's talk about this point a little bit. So in that novella, you can realize how the native people attacked the ship that Marlowe already in, and no one died except the person or a guy who is black. So later on we'll talk about the name, but today is just a first glance, and we have to show you a little bit from the writing here. So no one died from the white people, but black, they easily can be died. That's very, very cunning description, and it's like a paradox. Even they attacked the white people, but only one guy who's black just died. Okay, so let's move on. Here we have to understand the purpose of Conrad is to demonstrate the reconciliation between modern European and primitive people that occurred with the power of imperialism in Heart of Darkness. Marlowe's Western mind can be interpreted in Conrad's descriptions from the perspective of Margaret Mary. Marlowe is located entirely within the commodious and efficient boundaries of Western civilization. Evaluating the comment about Conrad's novel, the reader notices that Conrad places Marlowe as a white man to the center of civilization in the African Congo. One of the basic reasons of such a way that Conrad's follow is that he supported the authority which will be built on the African natives by European. So they need to build their own empire by the natives themselves. So that's how Conrad supported the authority to control people in Africa. And in addition, while Marlowe is telling the story of his decision to sailing through Congo, he says, and I looked at the map of it in a shop window. It fascinated me. As a snake would a bird, silly little bird, the snake had charmed me. So it looks like he looked at one area or one land and he just admired to it, and it looks like a bird and he wanted to be there. That's very easy for him and for white people. Here Conrad implicates that the snake represents the Congo River with its curving. Then Marlowe adds, the river was there, fascinating, deadly like snake. Conrad shows enchanting aspects of Congo. The Congo becomes charming snake with its primitiveness. So that's how white people think about the resources of the African countries. It has a lot of resources. Imperialism begins with coming of European to African. So what do you mean by imperialism? يعني استعمارية. To African Congo, the aim of bringing civilization during the reign of Belgian King Leopold. Arriving of modern Europeans to the primitive Africa starts the imperialism in the Heart of Darkness. So if you look at my way of description here, the Heart of Darkness imperialism, you can, in your own analysis, you can talk about selfishness, you can talk about a lot of elements based on reader response, but here we just mention it imperialism because we later need to link it to colonialism thinking. This examines how Conrad's Heart of Darkness supports the idea of imperialism and colonialism, slavery. So first, Conrad's support imperialism can be seen in his positive treatment of colonialism in the late 1800s. And to establish dominance in the Congo is the principal cause why the Europeans come to Africa. In The Heart of Darkness, Conrad investigates the nature of colonialism for this reason. He emphasizes the importance of colonization for the nation. And that's one part we're still talking about it. Let's move to this part here. The term picturesqueness of colonialism is portrayed with a lot of people, mostly black and naked, moved about like ants. So that's a way of description, how they look at native people or black people in the eyes of white. So again, we have here economy is always the head of everything for the nation, such as Kennedy emphasizes that economic growth without social progress lets the great majority of people remain in poverty, while privileged few reap the benefits of rising abundance. So it was not wrong to take economic advantage from the sources of undeveloped countries. For Conrad, Marlowe says that the word ivory, so if we want to talk about ivory, that it has a lot of resources, it is taken from the elephants. These ivories, they can get a lot of money, millions of millions, when they buy or when they sell or sold these kind of ivory to people in Europe. Ivory was the lucrative trade which was found by the Belgian trading company. When Belgian King Leopold II governed the Congo, it was useless to natives, but worthy to the white men because of its usage in ornaments manufacturing. So that's the point of ivory. It's one point that we need to understand why white men invaded Congo. Marlowe tells us Mr. Kurtz, the Belgian man who waited in the station in Congo. So if you read here, the president in charge of trading posts a very important one in the true ivory country. Kurtz is the king of ivory and the ruler of colonies in Congo. As a European, Ruskin remarks upon Kurtz by saying that Conrad created Kurtz to symbolize the fundamental conflicts and decadence. So here, Kurtz is another character in Heart of Darkness. Kurtz already there in Congo waiting Marlowe. So this is another character, and they nominated him as the king of ivory. So he knows how to find ivory everywhere, and that's why they show him as a hero. That's the language that Conrad used here. Someone, his name Chinua Achebe, he's a Nigerian writer, and he encountered Conrad writing, and he stood against his way of style of writing and say it's not a good way to describe black people like this. You can read about Chinua Achebe somehow in your own resources and find some information how the debate happened about criticizing Joseph Conrad, Heart of Darkness. Okay, so the constitution of slavery, also another point that we can think about it from reader response, why they should always show black people or black men as slaves. And that's one point that Conrad didn't avoid it, and it shows a lot of reactions for African or black people all over the world. So here you can see this trade is provided by the slaves. So the slaves made the ivory trade, and the ivory trade, Kurtz is the head of slaves in this novel. So Kurtz was already the king of them and also the master. Kurtz, the master of all slaves in Congo. So let's move on and see another example here. Marlowe stresses that there was nothing exactly profitable about the skulls which the company agent Kurtz had placed in front of his house. Unlike Kurds aims to found a civilized country in Africa as European man by using black people of Congo. Furthermore, Europeans' main goal is to create civilized place in Africa. It can be associated by Rudyard Kipling. If you read also about Rudyard Kipling, it's a work you can find it. White men's burdens or burden. White men's burden idea as European. So you can read about Rudyard Kipling somehow. On the other hand, so let's look at another point here. Slaves working on the railroad are presented as the image of progressing of Africa by Conrad. In addition to this, Freud claims civilization spreads with railroad speed. So the railroad or the railroad that made by also slavery. This is another issue. In Heart of Darkness, building of civilization. Here Conrad set up controversy between civilized and uncivilized people. Like what? Civilized elevate certain principles as societal ideas such as equality, opportunity, justice of intellectualism. The civilized people of the earth often try to impress their values onto the perceived savages. They justify their actions with higher purpose, either the name of God. So that's how he showed that people of civilized culture always gaining attention and they have God will with them. That's the way for him to describe the civilized people. Okay, so we have here one point about Swede. So Swede says there's your company station and he comes upon railway truck lying there on its. You can read about Swede in the character of the novel. Okay, furthermore, cultural civilization in African Congo can be seen in the Marlowe experiences. So till now we can understand that the point how we civilize the people and how those white men steal the resources from Congo. That's the point that already we find it. Consequently, Heart of Darkness is one of the most influential novel or novella in English literature, written about imperialistic point of view. Conrad's novel supports the idea of imperialism by reflecting benefits of colonialism, slavery, and civilization on Europeans. The idea of imperialism supported and interpreted in many different ways in the novel. And here the economic factors in colonialism and significance of the ivory are emphasized by the author. The cause and consequences of colonization is discussed. Likewise, examples of enslavement are available in Conrad's novel. So that's the way for conclusion. It seems that for conclusion, if we need to look at conclusion, it seems that Joseph Conrad carefully chose words, heart, and darkness to name his novella. The language used support the literal meaning of the element and character in the novella, where symbols help them to acquire most profound meaning. Not only does Heart of Darkness refer to the center of a place where dark people live, but it also refers to the dark or evil aspects of a human being's heart. Conrad wanted to convey a meaning. He apparently wanted to criticize what was regular and accepted behavior at that time. Colonizing new land, civilizing new people. Today, almost 2 centuries later, darkness still exists in the heart of those who want to take place and civilization to the rest of the world. So that's how we end our essay, and we end our discussion about reader response theory and reader response with Heart of Darkness. It's very important for you to reread again the Heart of Darkness. Try to find the plot, read about Marlowe, Kurtz, and what happened in the end, like when Marlowe back to the wife or the fiancée of Kurtz, and he lied about her because Kurtz already died, or he didn't say the truth about his death. So you can read carefully and find as much as you can from the resources, because next time we will talk about not reader response, we will talk about colonialism, post-colonialism with modernism in general. We try to focus on them because this is the way, and try to reread Gatsby reader response discussion. I think we focus too much about Gatsby, but in this time we have to check out the work of Heart of Darkness for the following 2 weeks. I wish that you understand what I mean, and we will discuss all the issues in the following days. Keep in touch, be tuned with me, and I hope to see you again. Thank you very much for listening.